Remember when the MCU felt invincible? Like every new announcement was an event, every film a guaranteed home run or a billion-dollar winner? Yeah, me too, and Pepperidge Farm remembers as well. But somewhere between the triumphant crescendo of Endgame and the Marvels, something shifted. The magic, the undeniable spark, it just sort of dried up and blew away. And for us, the diehard fans who lived and breathed the MCU for years, that's a tough pill to swallow. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. Now, before we get started, let me just say it outright. We're not here to dunk on Marvel just for the sake of it. I mean, that's honestly a little bit too easy at this point. We're here because we love Marvel. And when something you love stumbles and falls and makes the same mistakes over and over again, you want to understand why. Phase 4 promised a grand new era, a multiverse of possibilities. What we got instead was, well, a bit of a mess. Critical scores dried up. Box office numbers fell to the basement and became less and less profitable as time went on, especially even now getting into losing money territory. And the collective online conversation moved from, oh boy, did you see what they just did, to, boy, did you see what they're about to do? And in that whole thing, it turns into a big mess. Today we're dissecting the top 5, I believe, unavoidable reasons why MCU Phase 4 couldn't quite replicate the unprecedented critical and commercial success of its predecessors. And trust me, it mostly boils down to two things, really. Reduced quality and a jarring mismatch with what we, the fans, actually wanted. We're going to get into that in a little bit more detail. So let's dive in before another hero with questionable CGI flies onto the screen. To kick the list off, starting at number 5, we're going to begin with what I call the who are these guys problem. Look, we all love deep cuts and expanding the universe and seeing characters that are obscure or very niche in appeal appearing on the big screen, especially for people like me who like some of the lesser known characters. But after 10 plus years of building up Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor into global icons, partly from the way they're represented, partly from the quality of the acting, suddenly we're expected to invest heavily in characters like Cersei and Dane Whitman, also known as the Black Knight. Does anybody even know who these characters are? In this case, if you haven't heard of those characters before, we're talking about the film The Eternals. A visually stunning film, make no mistake, sure, but how many of you genuinely walked out of that film caring about any of those characters? Compare that to the instant connection we had with even a C-lister like Ant-Man, played by Paul Rudd in his debut. The reliance on relatively obscure comic characters without the stellar writing to make us care led to a disconnect. We weren't building new relationships, we were being introduced to strangers we often forgot by the end of the credits. It's like being at a party where everyone tells you about their new obscure friend, and you're just nodding along politely, just going along with the crowd, secretly wishing for the familiar faces to show up so you can get out of that conversation. Coming in at number 4, we have what I'll call the homework assignment problem. Remember when a Marvel movie was just that, a Marvel movie? You bought your ticket, you watched it, and understood pretty much everything you needed to know because the entire story felt complete and self-contained. There might have been connections to other films, but you didn't need to know what was going on outside of the film to understand what happened inside the film. Not anymore. Phase 4 decided that if you want to grasp Scarlet Witch and her motivations in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, you had to have watched all 9 episodes of WandaVision. Now, for me personally, I thought that was a good series, but if you didn't watch the series, you were going to be completely lost. Now you might say to yourself, well, sometimes you have to do that world building to get the context, to get the background. But in this case, that isn't world building. It's a prerequisite. It fragmented the audience. Casual viewers who were once the backbone of the MCU's box office dominance were left scratching their heads, feeling like they'd missed half the story, and truthfully, they did. Frankly, even for some hardcore fans, keeping up with multiple Disney Plus series and the movies became less of a joy and more of a chore because there was just so much to consume and you had to put the pieces together to make it work. The interconnectedness became less about rewarding loyalty and more about punishing those who didn't subscribe to every streaming service. It's like being told you can't enjoy dessert until you've eaten all your vegetables, even when the whole point to going to a movie is like getting that dessert. If you just wanted a quick snack and you just wanted a treat, you felt like you had to do the work to earn it even though you're already paying for your ticket. At number 3, we're tackling the what's the plan problem, and even though we're focusing on MCU, this also applies to Lucasfilm primarily with Star Wars because it's the exact same problem. Phases 1 through 3 had a clear, undeniable endgame, literally, and it's in the title, the eventual cataclysmic clash with Thanos. Every movie, every character arc felt like a deliberate step toward that epic confrontation, even though they were still self-contained movies that you could enjoy on their own. You could see the breadcrumbs. You could envision the meticulously placed pieces on the board. Phase 4? Not so. It felt less like a master plan and more like just throwing darts at a corkboard hoping something would stick. Here are a few examples. We had supernatural horror with Werewolf by Night, a legal comedy with She-Hulk, and I mean that in very loose terms because that show was awful. You had cosmic epics like with The Eternals, as we've already covered. Nobody even remembers who was in it or why and what was going on. And then you have street-level vigilantism with Hawkeye, which was an okay series. Not great, but it was okay. Individually, some of these had their moments, but as part of a larger narrative, they felt disconnected. Where was the big bad that they would eventually all move towards? Where was the overarching threat that tied it all together? The multiverse saga was hinted at, but without a clear villain or a palpable sense of escalating stakes, it felt like a promise without a payoff. It left us wondering, are we building to something monumental? Are we moving towards some cataclysmic direction or focal point? Or are we just building for the sake of building? In this case, yeah, that's all it was, building for the sake of building. Sliding into the number 2 spot is the humor over heart problem, and this one stings me personally because I do a lot of writing. I'm getting ready to publish my first mainstream novel, so for me to be digging into stories and understanding what makes them tick, to see the MCU, which has millions of dollars at their disposal, make this problem is it's a heartbreaker. The MCU was built on a foundation of witty banter, and that's okay. It's alright, there's nothing wrong with witty banter, and especially when that applies to the characters because it's consistent with their personalities. Iron Man, Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., he is a snarky, sarcastic, snappy, witty banter kind of personality. For him, that makes sense. But in Phase 4, the writing, specifically in the comedic department, often felt off and just plain terrible. It veered from clever to cringeworthy, and worse, it frequently undercut genuine emotional moments. And we've got plenty of examples to choose from. Films like Thor, Love and Thunder, and Ant-Man Quantumania are prime examples. The writing often prioritized a quick gag over character development or thematic weight. Important character moments were deflated by an ill-timed punchline. This sharp, witty tone we're aiming for here, the MCU nailed it in the original phases, 1 through 3. Now it often feels like the scriptwriters are desperately trying to inject humor without understanding why the original humor worked. The MCU is not a joke, but they're treating it like a joke. It felt less like organic character interactions like Iron Man with Thor and Captain America, and more like a stand-up routine, often at the expense of the story's emotional core. When every other line is a joke, none of them land, and it all comes at the expense of the emotional impact. The emotional impact is what people remember, and if you take that away, there's nothing to latch onto. And coming in at number 1, the big reason, the undeniable heavyweight champion of Phase 4's struggles, it's simply this: quantity over quality. With a primary focus on the overall decline in writing, this isn't about specific jokes or character choices or whether or not like character A versus character B, or if one represents one type of story versus the other and all the different excuses you can come up with. At the very heart of it, it's about the fundamental craftsmanship of the script. From the Marvels feeling rushed and underdeveloped, to the structural issues in the Eternals, to the frankly baffling decisions in Ant-Man Quantumania. I don't even want to get into MODOK. I mean, that was just embarrassing. The writing just wasn't consistently strong. Characters made illogical choices, plots felt convoluted or overly simplistic, and the emotional stakes, which were once the MCU's bread and butter, felt diminished. Again, if you undercut the emotional impact, it's not going to land. It's not going to have that stick-to-itiveness that viewers are looking for. It's almost as if the sheer volume of content Marvel was churning out led to a dilution of talent or a lack of sufficient time for scripts to be properly refined. When you have so many projects in the pipeline, the meticulous attention to detail that defined earlier phases seems to just dried up and blown away. We're not asking for perfection. Nobody's saying they have to be perfect. And if you look at the billion-dollar hits of the first 3 phases, even the big boys had flaws that you could point to. They're not perfect. But what we are asking for are stories that make sense, that resonate, particularly on an emotional level, and that respect the legacy built over decades. So there you have it. The top 5 reasons why MCU Phase 4 and beyond, for many of us, just didn't quite hit those stratospheric heights. It's not about hating on Marvel. Sure, there's plenty of ammunition to do that. It's about holding a beloved franchise to the standard it's set for itself. What's the good news? Marvel Studios seems to be aware of some of these issues, and even though they still got to get a lot of that junk out of the pipeline, it looks like they're trying to feed in more good quality, with Kevin Feige himself admitting to slowing down and controlling the output so you can focus on quality over quantity. Fingers crossed, that means a renewed focus on what made us fall in love with this universe in the first place, which is quality storytelling, impactful characters, and a clear vision. These are our thoughts. What are your thoughts on MCU Phase 4? Do you agree with our list, or did we miss something crucial? Let us know your take in the comments below. We want to hear from you. And if you want more sharp, witty breakdowns of all things comics and comics related, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next video.